center, and she is also she directs the Bunraku and No and Salm of the center. Friends, let us all welcome Professor Amparo Adelina Umali. Gina, Professor Umali, may we request you to unmute? There you are. Good morning. Gina, can you please make it louder? You're still muted. We have unmuted you, but you need to unmute yourself also.
Okay.
There.
Okay. Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. Good morning to all of us here in the Philippines. Thank you for joining us today from different time zones. So let me greet those in the Pacific time zone. Magandang hapon or a good afternoon. And those in the Eastern Daylight time zone, a magandang gabi or good evening. We at the Center for International Studies of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, are very honored to welcome our esteemed author, Professor Emerita Pao-yu Ching, and all of you who are here to the Philippine book launch of Rethinking Socialism and From Victory to Defeat, published by Foreign Language Press. The study of China is one area that is of interest to the East and Southeast Asian Studies Division of the Center. Through these books, Professor Ching directs us to have a critical look at contemporary China. More importantly, to learn the lessons from the Chinese experience of many changes in culture, society, and the rights of women. Today's book launch also falls on an important date in history as we commemorate the 103rd anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, when Bolshevik party leader Vladimir Lenin and leftist revolutionaries launched an almost bloodless coup d'etat against the Duma's provisional government. Lenin then called for a Soviet government ruled by councils of soldiers, peasants, and workers. Lenin's victory established the Soviet Union. We are grateful to the author, Professor Pao-yu Ching, and our partners, the Foreign Language Press and Bayan, or Bagong Alyansang Makabayan, and to our colleagues, friends, and students who are here with us today. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Gina, Professor Umali, for that wonderful introduction to our very special event this morning. I would just like to tell our audience that we have here with us, of course, Professor Emerita Pao-yu Ching, Comrade Pao-yu. We already have with us other participants or speakers for this morning. Professor Joshua Mufawad Paul is already here. Of course, at this point, I would like to call on the one who manages the Foreign Languages Press, who's our gracious partner for this event. He will introduce the books published by FOP, and of course, our esteemed author, Pao-yu Ching. We are happy to have here with us our comrade. He's an internationalist and an advocate of revolutionary press, and he himself also manages FOP. Let us all welcome Christophe Kistler. Go ahead, Christophe.
Hello, everybody. So, as Sarah presented me, my name is Christophe Kistler. So I'm part of the Foreign Languages Press. So we are really excited to take part in this book launch of those like two very important books of Pao-yu Ching, Rethinking Socialism and From Victory to Defeat. So for us, Rethinking Socialism, when we published it, at that time, it was somewhat of like a hidden gem or something like that, because we were seeing like it circulating around different study circles in imperialist country, but really it was like being 20 years after it was already released as a booklet that actually became very hard to get. So like since the early 2010, more or less, as there were a new interest in, especially in imperialist countries, from like a younger generation of Maoists, we saw it especially spread like a lot on the internet and sort of became like a classic text to help activists who had questions about socialist China and capitalist transformation. Yeah, because after 30 years of socialism and like 40 plus years of capitalism, China and all of the question that those 70 years raised remain on the mind of those who are struggling to make revolution. So while it's easy today to declare, to say like, yeah, China is not socialist anymore, like the stuff that Rethinking Socialism really helps is to give us in an easy way how actually socialism was constructed. So this understanding, I believe right now is even more crucial, especially like if we follow the recent news on the development of the revolutionary movement in the Philippines. It seems that the question of the construction of socialism there, it's more like, it's less a question of like if and more a question of when. So I believe this book can help us not only to understand what socialism is not, but what socialism is. So in 2017, we reached out to Pao-yu with the request to republish this small book in order to like facilitate its spread and study. And we really, she was both surprised and enthusiastic about the project. Yeah, just like her stipulation, let's call it, was that like she should write a new introduction to update and correct some of the text. And then like we printed 100 copies, I think, that sold out really quickly. And since then we have reprinted several times, but not only reprinted it in English, we've been working also with other publishers in the world to have it translated. We have, in 2018, we had it translated to French. It was published by Édition Soleil Rouge. And on this occasion, Professor Pao-yu came to Europe for a series of studies with the young generation of Maoists who had like so many questions about like the different new development of China that happened like in the 20 years after she wrote this pamphlet. And the cool stuff about that was following this like tour sort of. Professor Pao-yu gathered all of those questions that she got, and she sort of like synthesized them in 7 broad questions to which she wrote a long and detailed answer. And those answers compiled together became From Victory to Defeat, yeah, which is like another clear step-by-step approach to understanding China's transformation. And yes, one of the only living Maoist economists, writing in English at least, Pao-yu did what other authors have not. She brought like her explanation and description to the material basis in the economic base for socialism defeat in China. So bringing this understanding of Marxist economics to today's activists struggling for socialism is, in our opinion, like Pao-yu's greatest contribution to revolutionary movement around the world. Yeah, so Pao-yu and Foreign Language Express were pleased and grateful to authors, teacher, and philosopher Josh Paul for writing a lovely introduction to From Victory to Defeat. This book has sold now, I think we are close to like 500 or 600 copies since we released it in July 2019. And we also work with comrades in Turkey who are from prestigious radical publisher Patika Kitap, which published it in 2019, a translation. And yeah, there are other translations that will come soon, and we are really enthusiastic about that. Yeah. So to that, both Rethinking Socialism and From Victory to Defeat were made into an audiobook. For Rethinking Socialism, it happened a few months ago. For From Victory to Defeat, the comrade doing those audiobooks from the Manifesting podcast have made it specially available for this very event. So it will be available online just after. So we are really excited about that. That's awesome. Thanks a lot to him. And also to announce that we are going to have in a matter of days a Chinese translation of Rethinking Socialism that will be published as a hard copy. Yeah, but as much as everything that we publish with FLP will make it available for free on our website. And yeah, so once again, thank you to all the organizers. Thanks to letting me have like this opportunity to tell a few words about what we do. And I don't know who is talking after that, but I will give back the floor to Sarah, I guess. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Kistler. And at this point, we would thank you so much for your message. And I would just like to reiterate that these two books that we are launching are actually available on FLP website, and you can download them for free. And of course, you can also order them from the publisher. And I think they deliver at least 2 weeks or 3 weeks after you have placed your order.
Did we just lose Sarah? I think we just lost Sarah. So just wait a minute, comrades. Okay, we are trying to figure out what happened with Sarah. We hope she is doing fine. Hello, Professor Pao-yu. I will.
Just. Hello.
Hello, Pao-yu. Pao-yu, we just lost Sarah, who is our organizer. So I think we can give you the floor, and you can tell us more about your book.
So I can start?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to speak with you. I want to give you a very little background on how I started writing. It was William Hinton, author of Fan Shen Shen Fan and so many other important books on China, who first encouraged me to write. After my first article was published by the Monthly Review, Professor Jose Maria Sison read it and decided to invite me to the seminar of Mao Zedong's thought in Germany to celebrate Mao's 100th birthday in 1993. At the seminar, I met so many Maoist revolutionaries from all over the world. It was such an eye-opening event for me and exposed me for the first time to the revolutionary movement in many countries, including the Philippines. In 1996, I received an invitation from Bayang to attend a conference on alternative economic development in the Philippines. I went with Bill Hinton and his sister Joan, who had lived in China since 1948. Again, it was a very eye-opening experience for me. Many important global issues were discussed and also debated at the conference. We witnessed so many people from all over the world refuting neoliberalism, which is a new phase of imperialism, not only with words, but with actions. Members of Pao-yu planned and executed the event with such focus, conviction, enthusiasm, and efficiency. I remember Bill saying, "These young women and young men are remarkable." After the conference, we marched the street all the way to Subic Bay. It is a big stretch to say we marched because we, the old folks, rode the young at heart jeepney, accompanied by a medical doctor, all the way to Subic Bay. We saw so many people of all walks of life marching on the street, including the nuns, the priests, and the monks. There were so many people lined up the street to watch. Needless to say, Bill, Joan, and I were totally impressed. In the next 20-some years, I returned to the Philippines many times, joining the mass movements and also participating in the anti-globalization event Pao-yu organized in many parts of the world. I'm very grateful that I learned so much from the Filipino movement. Later, I also visited Brazil and Argentina to learn about their movements. It was through Professor Sisong's encouragement that I first put together my papers on China into a book. It has been the struggles of people in China, struggles of people in the Philippines, and struggle of people all over the world that kept me writing. In recent years, the foreign language press willingness to publish my books also giving me a lot of encouragement to write. As I grow older, my books have become smaller. So I will spend the next few minutes to explain why I wrote these two small books. There are several reasons, but the most important reason is that I want to explain why socialism in China did not fail. Instead, it succeeded exceedingly well. The Chinese people loved socialism and have continued longing for socialism. The reason Chinese people supported socialism was not only because their lives under socialism improved tremendously, but also because they were helping to build a brand new society that, for the most part, free of exploitation and oppression. Deng Xiaoping, the chief Chinese capitalist reformer, knew that Chinese people loved socialism, which is why he avoided saying that his reform was capitalist. Instead, he invented the phrase socialism with Chinese characteristic, a phrase that the current regime continues to use. Moreover, the capitalist reformer knew too well that they could not and cannot denounce the Chinese Communist Party led by Mao Zedong, because they knew the Chinese people would not allow it. But today in China, people fully understand the Chinese Communist Party no longer struggles for them, and it no longer serves the people. I remember some years ago, I was worried what would happen to China when people who lived under socialism die off and the younger people would not know what socialism was. That worry was totally unnecessary because even in just 30 years, strictly speaking, only in 20 years, socialism became so deeply rooted in the Chinese society. The experience of socialism have given people the confidence that it's possible to have a society without exploitation and oppression, and that the struggle for such a society is totally worthwhile. When recently a young university student said about himself and his comrade, quote, "We will always be the sons and daughters of workers and peasants." It brought tears to my eyes. I was equally touched when older person said, "We are old and cannot do very much for the struggle, but we can bend down and provide our backs for young people to step on and charge forward." I'm honored that Professor Jose Maria Sison will review the Rethinking Socialism book today. I'm grateful to Joshua Moffett Paul, who wrote the preface for the other book, From Victory to Defeat, and also will review the book today. To end my short note, I would like to thank Bayang, the University of the Philippines Center for International Studies, and Foreign Language Press for working hard to make this book launch possible. I would also like to thank all of you for attending the book launch. Thank you so much. Okay, that's the end.
Thank you so much, Professor Pao-yu. We will still be with Pao-yu. She will join us, of course, on the question and answer in our open forum. And as mentioned earlier, we're actually launching 2 books today. One was published in 2017, Rethinking Socialism. And we also have the honor to have a great book reviewer for this particular work. And as Comrade Pao-yu has mentioned, she has worked with Filipino activists, including our book reviewer for Rethinking Socialism. So our reviewer is the Chair Emeritus of the International League of People's Struggle. He's also the Chief Political Consultant of the National Democratic Front of the Philippines. We are so happy and proud to have Professor Jose Maria Sison to share with us his comments, his notes on Professor Pao-yu's Rethinking Socialism. We are playing his video, and he also has the text of this, a longer version of this particular review, and we will make it available to all participants. We're playing it now.
Dear comrades and friends, I convey warmest greetings to all participants in this book launch. I thank the East and Southeast Asian Studies section of the University of the Philippines Center for International Studies for inviting me to do a review of Rethinking Socialism by Deng Yuan Shu and Pao-yu Ching. I agree with Professor Ching in her introduction of the 2017 edition of this book that socialism in China did not fail because of inherent invalidity in theoretical and practical terms, but because it was defeated in a 2-line class struggle between the socialist line of Comrade Mao and the bourgeois line of the capitalist rulers headed by Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping. The book provides important facts, insights, and analysis regarding this struggle. The main concern of the book is about the conflicting socialist and capitalist projects, but it also relates the economic issue. Rethinking Socialism describes correctly the years of 1949 to 1952 in China as a period of rehabilitation and consolidation consequent to the overthrow of the joint dictatorship of the comprador big bourgeoisie and landlord class, which had been run by the Kuomintang party and centered on the bureaucrat. Cooperatives were organized as the embryo of bigger enterprises. By 1953, China was ready to carry out the first of its 5-year plans to develop the socialist economy. There was a high tide of enthusiasm in socialist construction. Public ownership of the means of production became predominant, with state ownership of industries and collective ownership in agriculture. The basic socialist transformation of the economy was accomplished during the first 5-year economic plan. But in 1956, the struggle between the socialist line, represented by Mao, and the bourgeois line, represented by Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping, emerged. Rethinking Socialism gives us a clear account of this two-line struggle in terms of conflicting socialist and capitalist projects. In the first session of the 8th Congress of the Communist Party of China in 1956, Liu and Deng exaggerated the negative side of the situation. They did not see the contradictions within and between the state and collective sectors of the economy as opportunities for solving them and advancing the socialist economy. They advocated the prolongation of concessions to the national bourgeoisie, the small entrepreneurs, and the rich peasants. The adoption of the second 5-year plan under the banner of the Great Leap Forward in the second session of the 8th Party Congress in 1958 essentially blocked the bourgeois line and capitalist projects of Liu and Deng. It was a well-proportioned and well-balanced plan of building the heavy and basic industries as the leading factor, developing agriculture and the communes as the base of the economy, and light industry to serve immediately the consumer and production needs of the masses and to hasten accumulation. Tremendous odds were overcome, including the Soviet revisionist tearing up of contracts and blueprints and abandonment of ongoing projects, and the persistent attempts of the capitalist rulers to sabotage the Great Leap Forward. Following their Soviet revisionist mentors, the capitalist rulers preached that the communes would fail because it was not preceded by mechanization. To counter the communes, they pushed the line of 3 freedoms and 1 contract. While the general trend in the Great Leap Forward spelled a great victory for the socialist revolution and construction, adverse circumstances and mistakes were exaggerated to misrepresent it and ridicule the leadership of Mao. But the problems and difficulties were overcome. After the first bumper crop of the communes came in 1962, Mao launched the Socialist Education Movement in 1963. The capitalist rulers systematically undermined and sabotaged the Socialist Education Movement. Thus, it became necessary to launch the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution in 1966 because of the growing manifestations of revisionism within the party and the state, and the deleterious influence and blatant threats of Soviet social imperialism. I had the good fortune to be in China when the GPCR started. The main objective of the GPCR was to combat modern revisionism, prevent the restoration of capitalism, and consolidate socialism, and to revolutionize the superstructure to further promote the development of the socialist mode of production. Instead of barely using top-down directives, the CPC, under Mao's leadership, aimed to arouse and mobilize the masses to advance proletarian socialist politics, economy, and culture, to press demands on the officials of the CPC and the state, criticize those who were errant, and overthrow the incorrigibles. The Central Committee of the CPC issued the May 16th circular to guide the GPCR in 1966. The signal mass event was the rise up of the Red Guards among the student youth who rebelled against the work teams deployed by Liu Shaoqi. Mao hailed the Red Guards as revolutionary successors and called on them to bombard the bourgeois headquarters within the Communist Party. At the same time, he called on the People's Liberation Army to support the left. In January 1967, the workers established the Shanghai Commune to overthrow the Shanghai Municipal Committee, but the instruction later came from the party to form revolutionary committees. The Revolutionary Committee became the model for establishing the organs of political power. New arrangements for responsible bodies in factories and in the communes were made. They were constituted by the representatives of the cadres, the masses, and the experts. Cadres were rotated to perform functions of leadership and to do low-level work among the masses. The charter of the Anshan Iron and Steel Company became a model for the mobilization of the masses and materials and resources to achieve greater success with revolutionary politics in command of production. The Ching model was used for industry and the Dachai model for agriculture. With revolutionary politics in command of production and the mass movements steering the entire country, the annual rates of economic growth went up beyond 10% in the entire course of the GPCR. Inspired by the GPCR, the most experienced cadres, scientists, engineers, and the educated youth fanned out from their urban concentrations in order to serve and assist in the building of industries, development of communes, and cultural upliftment of the people in the less developed and backward areas of China. The students were mobilized to do mass work among the workers and peasants. The theatrical models were being performed everywhere. Rural clinics and barefoot doctors were all over to serve the peasants in the most remote areas. In terms of delegates and elected officers of the Central Committee, the 9th Congress of the CPC reflected the initial achievements and objectives of the GPCR and the main forces and cadres that became prominent in the years of 1966 to 1969. The leadership of Mao was upheld, and so was Lin Biao as his closest comrade in arms. The Shanghai Group of Four, Jiang Ching, Wang Hongwen, Yao Wenyuan, and Xiang Chunqiao, was also on the rise. But soon after the 9th Party Congress, Lin Biao would be the target of accusations of scheming to make a coup until he died in a plane crash together with top defense officials close to him. The Group of Four from Shanghai kept their positions and increased their criticism of Lin Biao and also Zhou Enlai as Confucius and then as Zhou in the Noble Water Margin. But Zhou Enlai maintained this close comradeship with Mao. Twists and turns would occur in the GPCR, including the rehabilitation of Deng and then his removal from his high office after the death of Zhou in February 1976 for pushing his four modernizations, denounced as comprador bourgeois ideology, and then his success after the death of Mao in September 1976 at making a counter-revolutionary coup against the GPCR in collaboration with the centrist group of CPC chairman Hua Hofeng. Because it is focused on the contest between socialist and capitalist projects, Rethinking Socialism cites only a few personalities and groups in the political struggles. especially in the central organs of the CPC. However, it gives enough indicators for further research and discussion in order to know more about the identity and roles of the political actors in the zigzag of developments due to the two-line struggle within the CPC and the Chinese Socialist state. The issues debated and fought over were domestic and international. In foreign policy, China took a significant step in rapprochement and normalization of relations with the US in 1972. In this connection, Deng Xiaoping drew a diagram of the world consisting of a first world of two superpowers, second world of less developed capitalist countries, and a third world of countries and peoples in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Expectant of future excellent relations with the US, he and his staff drew up his scheme of four modernizations and ultimately the plan of reforms and opening up to the US and the world capitalist system. Through the 1976 Dengist coup, the class dictatorship of the proletariat was overthrown by the bourgeoisie. The counter-revolutionary plotters arrested and detained not just the so-called Gang of Four, but tens of thousands of cadres aligned with the GPCR, and millions of CPC members were expelled and replaced by those hostile to the GPCR. Consequently, the Dengists declared the GPCR as a complete catastrophe and that Mao was 100% in error for it. They were able to carry out capitalist-oriented economic reforms, mainly by changing the socialist character of the state-owned enterprises to state capitalist, expanding the private sector of the economy, dismantling the commune system, and privatizing the rural industries. They opened up and integrated the Chinese economy with the world capitalist system and joined the US in carrying out the neoliberal policy of imperialist globalization. Rethinking Socialism is an excellent summary and analysis of the victory of socialism and subsequent defeat in China. It provides us with substantial points to study and understand the causes and processes involved in the victory of socialism and subsequently its defeat, so that in the future, the proletariat and the people will know the basic principles and methods to apply and develop in order to win in the struggle for socialism as the transition to communism. We can learn from the positive and negative lessons in order to achieve greater victories for the socialist cause. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jose Marie Sison or Kajoma. Some of our participants, particularly Grant Witherspoon, was saying that he's such a great speaker, and this is the first time that they've heard Joma speak. I think, Grant, if I may, you should listen to his recordings. His latest is the song Walk Away, and he's writing a new version of that, a revolutionary version of Walk Away. We're very happy, especially from the Center for International Studies, to have in one event two very important voices, thinkers and revolutionaries who actually see eye to eye on a very important point, not only about Chinese socialism, but the current world. And I think it needs to be repeated, this very important view that socialism is not a failed ideology. It was sabotaged from within the Communist Party of China, that even within the phase of socialist construction, there would be two competing ideologies, bourgeois and proletarian ideology. And for those of us who are still pushing for significant change, especially for the laboring peoples of the world, for the proletariat, I think that analysis that socialism was only defeated can only mean that we can begin again. Thank you so much, Kajoma. And at this point, again, we are very honored to have another reviewer for the book From Victory to Defeat. Our next reviewer is a Canadian academic and a writer from Toronto, Canada. He is a professor of philosophy at York University. He's a Maoist philosopher, and he works on this particular topic regularly on his blog MLM Mayhem, which focuses on the philosophy of Maoism. He is also on Twitter, so you can follow him there. And I also would like to let you know that is going to be our keynote speaker for our conference on Lenin and Engels on November 28th. The Congress of Teachers and Educators for Nationalism and Democracy will be holding this conference. And our keynote and our book reviewer for today is Comrade Joshua Mofawad Paul. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Just a second, trying to pull up my notes here. It's hard to follow Yoma Sison. It's a hard act to follow. I guess the only thing is that I'm live and he was on a video, so it might make it a little bit easier for me to follow. But I am truly honored to be here to talk about Pao-yu Ching's book, From Victory to Defeat, a bit, and also just to honor her legacy. And it's thanks for having me. So I have this piece that I've written up. I did write the preface, as was mentioned, to this book on a whole. So this is kind of a summation of my longer preface with a few thoughts that have happened since then. So at the end of the introduction of From Victory to Defeat, Pao-yu Ching writes, quote, "When revolutionaries decide to choose socialism over barbarism, and when they struggle against capitalism and for socialism, we need to have a deep and concrete understanding of what socialism is. Simply put, how and in what way socialism is the antithesis of capitalism," end quote. Far from being just an autopsy of revolutionary socialist construction and counter-revolutionary capitalist reconstruction in China, this book, which follows Rethinking Socialism, is also about how we understand making socialism and the dangers of counter-revolution. The antinomy of socialism or barbarism, waged by Engels and then Luxemburg, has been one that has been a concern of my own work, starting with The Communist Necessity. The point here is that From Victory to Defeat is not simply an analysis of China's political economy. It is a lesson about the meaning of socialism and capitalist counter-revolution, following the insights made in Rethinking Socialism, and thus what revolutionary movements can learn from the last, but not final, world historical socialist revolution. While on the one hand, this book functions to excoriate the Eurocentrism that dismisses revolutions in the global peripheries, castigate revisionists who would still defend China as socialist, and provides all of the political economy data required to trounce the revisionist dedication to so-called actually existing socialism. On the other hand, it is about how we need to think socialism according to the necessity of making communism. Since I'm not trained as a political economist or historian, my interest in Ching's work is philosophical. As a Marxist philosopher, I'm primarily interested in thinking through the fundamental concepts of historical materialism so as to understand their meaning and application in terms of social practice. So for me, it's not enough to simply state the scientific axiom of historical materialism, that history is the history of class struggle. We need to know what that means, to thoroughly know what it means, if we want to understand this history, let alone contribute to it. The same goes for every other notion that is part of the topography of the Marxist theoretical terrain: the commodity, surplus value, labor power, class and class struggle, the state. There are many terms we need to thoroughly think in our current conjuncture. The terms socialism and socialist transition, however, are two terms that Pao-yu Ching has rigorously thought and thus clarified. And when you think back to the video from Yoma about rethinking socialism, he kind of talked about all this stuff about socialism and socialist transition that was, the focus of rethinking socialism. And as has been mentioned, and as Chris mentioned at the beginning, From Victory to Defeat kind of follows from rethinking socialism and is based on questions that came out of rethinking socialism. But also the meaning of social, trying to figure out the meaning of socialism and what it means to make socialism can easily be neglected in this period following capitalism's triumphant claim that it is the end of history, that all challenges to its hegemony can only be failures. Ching's work demands that we refuse to see the history of socialism through this lens of failure by thinking the meaning of the socialist transition and what socialism is. In the preface I wrote for From Victory to Defeat, I argued that, quote, it is always important to understand what a text is in order to assess its merits, end quote. I suggested this book was not simply a work of descriptive political economy or a historiography of contemporary China, though it is definitely comprised of those aspects, but that it was a political intervention using the tools of political economy and historiography that lays out the case of the necessity of communist revolution. Hence, in examining the revolution and counter-revolution in China, From Victory to Defeat demarcates the pursuit of socialism from revisionism. In doing so, the book explicates 3 points that are foundational for anti-revisionist communist thinking. The first point is that socialist construction is, in Mao's words, not a dinner party. The parts in the book that talk about socialist construction and that bring home the previous analysis made in Rethinking Socialism demonstrate the upheaval and creativity involved in transforming society at all levels that is necessary for bringing us closer to communism. The second point, following the first, is that class struggle continues under socialism. Socialism is fragile. Its construction and persistence can always be compromised, and factions within the Communist Party itself can defeat the revolutionary line and reorientate society toward the capitalist road. The whole line that has traveled from socialist victory to its tragic defeat in China can be understood by this class struggle, and the book reveals the vicissitudes of this history so as to teach us what to expect in future attempts at constructing socialism. In this sense, Pao-yu Ching also reminds us that the problem is not that power corrupts, since political power is necessary to make revolution, but what political line commands political power. The third point is that even when a socialist revolution is defeated, if it has advanced far enough down the road to communist revolution, then the legacy of socialism will remain and will be difficult to stamp out. This, of course, emphasizes the categories Pao-yu Ching used in her 2017 introduction to Rethinking Socialism, where we shouldn't think of these revolutions as having failed, but as being defeated. And you saw Yoma talk about that again. He even quoted something about them being defeated. And you also saw Pao-yu Ching talk about that at the beginning, and also even mention this notion of the legacy that still remains in China. There were forces that actively defeated the revolution, but the forces that had for a time held aloft the banner of socialism and infused the masses with a sense of victory over their immiseration will have left a legacy that remains. And thus, we can also learn from these defeats, as From Victory to Defeat helps us to learn, so as to be ready for them when we encounter similar problems in the future. Indeed, the book ends by looking towards the future. It is not simply a report on an important period of human history concerned with telling us what happened and the political economy involved. It began by contextualizing the book's object of critique within the antinomy of socialism or barbarism, by telling us that we need to cast off Eurocentric assumptions about making revolution, and it ends by claiming that, quote, our future depends on how revolutionaries can unite the international working class to resolutely destroy international monopoly capital, to end capitalism and build socialism, end quote. For this future to come into being, revolutionary movements need to be aware of the victories and defeats of past socialist revolutions, along with the theoretical innovations generated by these struggles, if we have a chance of choosing socialism over barbarism. Studying the last, but hopefully not final, world historical revolution, the revolution in China, led by Mao Zedong's political line, the victories it secured, and then the overturning of these victories through counter-revolutionary defeat is necessary work, but not so that we can embalm this history in the tomb of memory, isolating it from the present and making it merely a story of heroism that is disconnected from today. There is a tendency, after all, to treat history as a series of disconnected events, to avoid the so-called meta-narrative of historical causality that is key to Marxism, and aimlessly reinvent the proverbial wheel. According to this tendency, Lenin is important insofar as he led a successful revolution in 1917, but this event, we are told, belongs only to that era and is important only because it was heroic. Mao too led a successful revolution, and a revolution within the revolution, that is also important so long as it remains isolated to its context. We live, we are told, in different times. On the other hand, there is the tendency to see history as a flat circle rather than the dialectical spiral of continuous discontinuity, where these great revolutionary events were not defeated, but are seen to remain in mummified victory. This is the revisionist view of history, the view, for example, that sees China as being socialist, with Deng and now Xi as direct inheritors and innovators of Mao, because it cannot admit that capitalism and imperialism can march forward under the mask of socialism, even to the point of farce. Ching's work rejects both of these tendencies. She reminds us of the weight of history under which we struggle. She rejects the panacea of actually existing socialism. She reminds us in this work and everything she has written that, quote, and this is a quote from the book, capitalism dictated by the will of capital for limitless expansion is on a collision course with the limits of the planet where we all reside. Socialism is the only kind of development that can stop the earth from destruction, end quote. From Victory to Defeat is one of those books that is essential to cultivating an awareness of what socialism is, and I would urge all comrades and would-be comrades to study it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mofawad Paul. We will be asking our reviewer, Josh, and also Kistler to join us at the for the open forum. But before we begin, I think we need to acknowledge people who are here with us. Of course, it will be difficult to acknowledge everyone, but I was also told by Pao-yu's daughter that she's been very excited to see comrades who are joining us for this particular book launch. And so I would like to just give a shout out to our comrades, Liza Masa, Secretary General of ILPS. We also have Sonny Africa of Ibon Philippines. We have Carol Araulio, chair of the New Patriotic Alliance, or Bayan. But also would like to recognize Professor Cynthia Neri Zayas, former director of the Center for International Studies, who is here with us. Okay, so at this point, I would like to let's proceed to the open forum. But before that, let me just share with you a few notes about our esteemed speaker who will be with us, and we're very happy that she agreed to participate and answer your questions. Pao-yu Ching was born in Beijing. She graduated with a BA in economics at the National Taichung University of Education in 1960. She emigrated in 1961 to the United States to study at Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, where she graduated in 1963. So between 1979 and 2003, she taught economics at the Marygrove College, Detroit, Michigan. She became a Maoist during the civil rights movement, and she has given lectures in Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brazil, Argentina, Canada, the United States, Germany, and the Netherlands. We will be asking you, if it's okay, we will be asking everyone to start their video. So if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand, and you can, just address your questions to Professor Pao-yu. We also would like to invite Christophe Kistler to join the panel, and Professor Mofawad Paul. So we have all three of them for the open forum. And all you have to do is to raise your hand if you have questions. But I'm sure Professor Pao-yu Ching would also be happy to just, hear your comments. The floor now is open for your questions and or comments.
Mm-hmm.
Laura.
Can you hear me?
I think there was someone who wanted to ask a question.
That's me.
Okay, go ahead, please.
This is addressed to Pao-yu Ching.
This is Rita Bawa of Bayan.
I'd like to know if the mass movement in China is sleeping, is not awake. You've often talked about mass movements in the Philippines, in China, in Brazil, etc. Given your experience in observing them, may I know if the mass movement in China is sleeping?
Okay, it is sleepy to you because they cannot work above ground. They have to be really underground. They cannot. Very small organized effort will be arrested. So you won't see it like other countries' mass movement, you know, big banners and marching and everything. It definitely will not see that. But they are very seriously studying so many things and discussing so many things. And they have, as far as I'm concerned, by reading what they write, they have very deep level understanding of the social problems in China today. And they, the reason for that is because they have something to compare. You know, in many countries today, you can say capitalism is not good and there's lots of problems and so forth, but there's nothing for people to compare with. In China, there is things for people to compare with. So you will not see the big mass movement openly and with big red banners and so forth, I think for quite a long while. And but the way they're proceeding it is necessary and is really I'm very much impressed with the way they could analyze problems. Hi there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pao-yu. Thank you, Rita. Would Christophe or Josh want to respond to that as well? Okay, so
it's not something I can comment on, having not, seen the mass movement in China.
All right.
Maybe I could say about from our side, I can't say about exactly what's going on in China right now. But one thing is sure is that us as working as Red Spark, we actually receive quite a lot of mail from there, and even the activity on Red Spark, there's a lot of people that have a deep interest there. So like Professor Pao-yu was saying, you can see it, people don't have a red mask and they don't do demonstration on the street, but there is definitely a huge interest. And I mean, the only fact that Red Spark have been operating on in Chinese with regular translation in Chinese for years now, and that we can see that each translation have several hundreds people reading it, proves something, I believe.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions? I would also like to recognize some more participants from the International League of People's Struggles. We have Malcolm Guy, who's been with us since 8 a.m., an hour before, and also Marie Botti from Canada. Actually, we have so many people from, different countries. Professor Mungaya of Content is already here. Is also here. Roberto Ryan of Bayan USA was also here. Thank you. Do we have more questions? Some of you might be a little bit shy to be recorded, so you can always just type your question on Okay, so there's one question from Will. I'll be reading it. In the US, it seems the overwhelming majority of communists believe that China is socialist. Therefore, we have comrades who support China. What are some of your thoughts about this?
Okay, for one thing, there are not a lot of communists in the US. you can count it with your fingers. Okay, so that's one thing. Okay, and the misunderstanding of what is going on in China is really from, if you only read the mainstream media and books and so forth, is they're purposely making it so that China is still a socialist country, and then the party is still a real communist party, and so forth. And one thing that when Rita asked the question, I think I want to say just a little bit more, is the struggle is just like when the Philippines movement struggle under Marcos. It's not that you have to totally, just without struggle against the regime. You have to, because that's the example of the Philippines, how they struggle, how you struggle and got rid of martial law and got rid of Marcos. The same thing in China today. You move a little bit forward. I mean, I'm talking about the real revolutionaries. You move a little bit forward, and then you get caught, and you were sent. The police ask you to come to the station to talk to you, and do some kind of punishment, and you back up a little bit, and you continue to move forward. So I'm not saying that because of the current regime, you are not doing anything. You do as much as you can under the circumstances, very much like the struggle in the Philippines.
Thank you.
Can I say something to that question too?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I laugh too about the amount of communists in America. I mean, the one thing is that it's, and I'm in Canada, but we can talk about this as well in Canada. But the one thing I think is that it's hard to know whether the overwhelming of how many communists that exist in Canada or the US actually believe this, but there's like a bunch of people that are like vocally loud about it, right? But I think also the fact is that in the US is very has a long history of anti-communism and has a long history of just saying China is communist. And so, and also there's this xenophobia to it. There's this deep-seated racism in American society towards China, and it's fear of the so-called yellow peril and things like that. So that when you have people that are, I guess, coming to communism in these old revisionist groups, they think that the progressive thing is suddenly to be well, China, the U.S. is China's communist, and they're really racist towards them. So China's communist, right? that's their response to it, and it also speaks to kind of a weakness in actually studying things, and this is why Pao-yu Ching's work is good, to allow us to understand it in the way that there's this aesthetic of communism that that China uses to mask the fact that it's not communist, right? And it's all this symbol. It's easy to get through once you peer through it, but there's a weakness in the communism of the U.S. and Canada that is still at the stage where they get caught up in that aesthetic, and so they can see this aesthetic and things that proclaim themselves communist, and they don't think through it. They just look at this kind of thing, and they get caught in this politics of aesthetics. And then end up defending this kind of revisionist line over and over again. So I think that's part of the problem too.
Thank you, Josh. I'd also would like to recognize our comrade from Bayan Central Luzon, Comrade Roman Colintan. This is very interactive. If people are reading our chat, we will publish this and send it to everyone. I'm not sure whether you wanted your comments to be read, but they're so wonderful, so I'll just read them aloud from June Versola of PRISM. The huge Chinese diaspora outside China could be of great assistance in supporting the struggles inside Chinese homeland, if only in terms of one, translating and disseminating original Chinese revolutionary material produced in the current period, which FLP has been trying to do successfully, and two, general solidarity action that is out of reach from Chinese fascists. I think that was a response to the previous question. Another from Comrade June Versola. Even in the 1920s, many cadres and activists of the CCP were recruited outside China as workers and students in Europe, and later returned to join the struggle. This could be a continuing pattern. And there's a comment from Sophia. Just a comment. I want to thank you all for speaking today. Being a young Maoist in Canada can at times be isolating, and it is inspiring to see older folks I can look up to and learn from. Thank you for that message. And I would just like to call on...
I just want to make a comment.
Oh, sorry.
I just want to make a comment. It's not true that the Chinese communists, the revolutionaries, they were most of them from Europe and then returned to China, because the father Mao's movement is really totally native Chinese. I mean, they have very little, effect from Western European countries. The impact, because a few of them were sent by the Chinese Communist Party to Europe. It's not like they returned to China and started revolution. This needs to be understood.
Okay. Thank you, Pao-yu, for that intervention. May I call on Xin Chen? Please go ahead, Xin Chen. She expressed that she wanted to respond to the previous question. May I call her? It's your turn.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you well.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like I'm the only Chinese sounding name here. So I'll just add some of my view on the situation of China right now, because I'm also active in groups of leftist Chinese forums on Weixin and in our area. And this year is particularly hard. Actually, it started since last year, not only because of the COVID-19 situation. Since last year, we have young Chinese activists got arrested for disseminating information not specifically against the Chinese Communist Party or even the central government, but something like a complaint of sanitation workers to the city government. And they were arrested on charges of subversion. And they without charge, because police in China can detain people for up to 14 days or 60 days without any charge. And so that's what happened to young people advocating some sort of labor right, or at least right to complain. They got treated as, anti-government subversion. So that's really hard. And another thing, of course, COVID-19 make it even harder, because right now the government had a legitimate reason, like everywhere else, that authoritarianism is for the good of the majority of people. And so like since April, there are multiple projects of young Chinese, mainly professionals in the IT industry, who want to preserve the memory of COVID-19 since the beginning of this year, and all those news and personal stories circulating online. They got arrested and put away too, and their identity online disappear. I don't believe things are so bad that they are murder or anything, but they are simply forbidden to speak out through the internet, which is the only venue for them to speak to a wider audience. And so that's the difficulty people who want to have some sort of voice in China are facing right now. And like all those leftist forums, we have to conduct it on a very ad hoc basis, and it cannot leave traces of that after it's finished. So this is one thing. And another thing is that in China today, the word communism in the color red, in the red flag, represent not only Mao's China or socialism. It sometimes represent ultra-nationalist Chinese nationalism. So like in so much border dispute with neighboring countries, with the Philippines, in fact, over the maritime borders, anybody who is against this one-sided Chinese nationalist claim will be called anti-communist. And also inside China, for instance, like the Mongolian people inside China, they used to be one of the most vocal participants of China's revolution. So the minorities policy in China under Mao is that Mongolian people, like the Mongolian, they unite with the Chinese nation based on based on socialism, principles of socialism. So Mongolians in China are encouraged to use their own language, to write their own history, and to use their language as a teaching medium. But starting September this year, they are forbidden to use Mongolian language to teach inside Inner Mongolia anymore, because the policy has changed without any public consultation from united under socialism to united under the Chinese nation. And so if you are a Mongolian in China for the past 70 years of the People's Republic, you stay with the Chinese because of this shared dream of socialism. But starting from September 15, no, the socialist dream is no longer available for you. You got to be a part of the Chinese nation. And this nation is often defined as speaking Chinese, using Chinese language, and all those traits that's only specific to the dominant ethnicity in China. So you see this fading away of the socialist dream is really not only affect the issue of, say, labor and capital, the working classes and the capitalists. It also affects almost every aspect of public life in China today. But yes, there are still a lot of people who are eager to learn what their grandparents' generation have been gone through, what the People's Republic is really about, and they want to debate that. But you have very sophisticated online censorship. So what you always have to do this kind of debate in coded language, and so it's difficult to have a really candid situation, and especially this year because all those gatherings offline is practically banned. So online conversation may become much more important for people who like to talk about what's going on in China today. But the online is exactly where the censorship is the most severe. So that's the not a good side, but I think I share the optimism that Pao-yu had cautiously expressed throughout that young people in China are really, they know capitalism is not good for humans, not good for this planet, and they know there should be ways out, and ways out is not anywhere else but in the history of their forebearers. And so that's a pretty widespread belief, but it's suppressed right now. Okay, that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Shin. So we have, I think, 5 more questions. We have 10 minutes to do this. We have a question from our Facebook Live from Stefano De Soto. How does the changes in the world economy, globalization, and neoliberalism since the defeat of socialism in China affect how we have to deal with the social and economic factors in order to build socialism both in semi-feudal countries and in imperialist ones?
That's a very big question.
Comprehensive exam question.
Yeah. So I think what happened is that on the surface, like China become a strong country. You know, people think China's economy is very strong, and Chinese government likes to show they are expanding worldwide. To their influence is expanding worldwide. However, for the people in China that under the globalization, under after 1979, Chinese people, especially Chinese workers, played a very important role internationally. Okay, for one thing is they really lowered wages of all the other countries' workers because people in different countries import goods from China made with cheap labor, so their own country, the wages being affected. So it's very hard for workers in other countries to demand higher wages. So for the majority of workers, on the surface, their life seems to be better. They wear better clothes. They have, even sometimes a motorcycle and so forth, some material goods, but their life is so insecure. They have very hard trouble to get housing. So for that reason, many young people who work for export industries that came to the south part of China, they have to leave their families behind. Right now, there are 60 million Chinese children, their parents left them behind and went to work, and they are depending on their grandparents, whom, the older grandparents, they really couldn't have a hard time taking care of them. So the sacrifice of workers made has just so tremendous in order to make on the surface very prosperous China. For the very few, for the very top 5% or so forth, or even smaller percentage, to live extraordinary luxurious life. They live such a life that the use of all the foreign exchanges earned by the workers by exporting cheap goods, the rich use it to just send their children abroad, or to buy luxuries, to buy the most expensive imported wine, to buy the most expensive cars, imported cars. So the polarization in China is just tremendous. It is so bad than many parts, even, I don't know, maybe Philippines in the same eco status. But so I think if we can explain all that to people, to workers, so that for them not to think the Chinese model is a viable and good model for them, and that will be really important.
Thank you, Pao. Let me just proceed to the next question because we have, I think, 6 more. 3 from sunny Africa, but it was his birthday yesterday, so we will read all of the 3 questions. But let me first read a question from Malcolm. For Pao-yu, Ching, did you see early on in your life or career that China was no longer socialist, or was it something that took time for you, where you were convinced it was no longer socialist? Were there any particular event or events or analysis that assisted you to come to your understanding of the nature of the Chinese revisionist regime today?
I was born in China, but I didn't grow up in China. The first time I visited China was 1979. It is the beginning of the capitalist reform. The reason I know that China was no longer a socialist country is from many reasons, many phenomena. I remember when I went to China in 1979, the lots of the socialist projects still there, right? The communes. I visited communes. I visited factories, and they were distinguishably different from the capitalist factories, from the from farms. So that gave me a very deep understanding, even though it was a quick trip. But I have been following China and read Mao's writing for quite a while. But the most important impression that made on that trip is you will see the director of the factory mingle with the workers. There's no difference. There's no separation between them. They wear all sleeveless top. They wear shorts, wear a sleeper because it was hot in the summer. It was not at all something like the capitalist countries. And the workers, the way they work is amazing. It's almost like I can say it's almost like, when we help people, help our friend moving, that we are part of the whole thing. I feel they feel the same way. They don't feel they're being, they have to obey such regulations and rules. That is because of the Cultural Revolution. So I follow very closely to what's going on in China, even though I was in the United States most of the time. So so gradually, little bit by little bit, they changed a lot. But from 1979, I was very clear. They have changed to become capitalist.
Thank you, Pao-yu. This is a related question. So I'll just be reading two more questions which are related to that question from Malcolm. This is from Sunny Africa of Ibon. Hello, Pao-yu. You're all too dressed up, so I'll just type this. How would you characterize the extent of penetration of foreign capital into China in the last few decades and the nature of the Chinese state's interaction with them? Similarly, what's the extent of exposure to foreign ideas, values, consumerism, and products among the Chinese people? Are there any implications for the Chinese people in their struggle for another victory? And in relation to that, let me just proceed to another question, which is quite related. Where is it? Do you think that the Chinese Communist Party has a revisionist line, or merely that the class antagonisms in China no longer are characterized by the dictatorship of the proletariat? If the former, what are the criticisms?
Okay, I have to understand the second question a little bit better. Hi, Sunny Africa. How are you? Your question is really big. It's really a lot to go over. How do I start? What is the most important part of Sunny's question?
Well, I think the extent of foreign capital penetration and basically people's activities, how dominant is or prevalent consumerism is, and so on.
Right. In the beginning, the foreign capital came in compared to Chinese capital is quite a large, amount. But primarily right now, the most powerful, most monopolized capital is Chinese bureaucratic capital. It's Chinese capital. It's not foreign capital. Initially, the foreign capital came in. The Chinese government wants to use them to open up the market. So like Volkswagen came first, and then some American car company came in. Primarily is for the foreign car companies, their goal was not to trying to occupy the Chinese market, but rather trying to produce a lot of cars to sell in China, because all this foreign import, they saw there is definitely a small, but because there's a lot of people in China, still is big. So urban middle class, we call petit bourgeois, they do have quite a lot of money to consume. So now the Chinese market is very important to foreign countries, foreign companies, very, very important. So for instance, in 1979, the car market worldwide, the number of cars sold is the same as the number of cars sold in China today. So for the foreign capital, for the capital of the capitalist countries, it opened up this huge market, which makes the crisis of overproduction less urgent. So, and also the other thing that the Chinese model is very beneficial for the monopoly capital is that it lowered the wages, as I said before. It has such a depressed pressure put on the wages of all workers in over the world. So Chinese become capitalist, make the whole sort of rescue the international capitalistic crisis. So to make the crisis much less so. So that's my answer to Sonic Africa.
Okay, thank you. The next question is quite interesting. Do you think that there is no transition period from pre-socialist society, feudal or capitalist, to socialist society? Is it not required to expand the material base to build a socialist society? For socialism doesn't mean distribution of poverty. The CPC says China is at primary stage of socialism. What can we learn from the experiences of Soviet Union and Cuba?
I think in China's experience tell us that China jumped pretty fast from a feudal society to the very initial state of socialism without going through the period of capitalism. So there's an argument saying that it is necessary to have a period of capitalism to develop the productive forces and then ready for socialism. Actually, Marx never thought a country like China could start socialism. So, but China did. I mean, it did happen. It's history now. But because of China's productive forces were not fully developed, actually it was very initially developed. So China socialism ran into difficulties because of that. And I wrote in the books. What kind of difficulty is it? Because the low level of productive forces development makes it that you cannot make the farm sector publicly owned. So they started communes, right? Communes is still not publicly owned, but collectively owned. So you have to start small scale of communes instead of a big public farm. So that's the trouble. And because of that, it was crucial for China for the workers and peasants to unite to proceed socialism. But then it became difficult for the workers and the peasants to unite because the countryside become very different. Some parts of countryside very rich, some part of countryside not rich at all. And so it's not equalized. It's very difficult to proceed worker peasants alliance under that circumstances. So I will not say, some people will say, you have to develop the productive forces before you can start socialism. I will not say that because China had example before developing the productive forces started socialism. But I will say it will run into difficulties. And those difficulties we should really know. And one reason for the socialism to be taken over is because it is difficult to form the workers' peasants alliance.
Thank you. We still have, I think, 4 more questions, but I think our guests and our speakers are getting tired. But I will ask this one last question. And for those whose questions have not been answered, may you please type in your email, and we'll send them out to Pao-yu and the other speakers, and then you can just converse, right?
Right, because it's difficult to understand some big question in a very short period of time in this question answer session.
Exactly. I think the questions would require a new book from Comrade Pao-yu. But this will be our last question. Oh, Joshua, did you want to say something? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that like some of the questions I'm seeing scrolling up here on the side are like questions that are actually answered in the books, and more reason to read the books because she like does engage with these questions.
Exactly. So for our last question from Carol Aralio, Chair of Bayan, I think this is addressed to Pao-yu. What is the likelihood of an armed conflict between China and the US, regardless of a Biden victory, given China's trajectory as a state monopoly capitalism is more overt imperialism?
I see definitely more and more and bigger contradiction between China and US. But I don't want to make a prediction whether there will be war or not war between the two countries. But they definitely compete very fiercely. The capitals in both China and the United States. So United States is an empire on the way of decline, and China is an empire on the way to rise up. So that's why it makes the conflict very interesting, other than just the two big powers. But I think I'm not able to answer the question about whether there will be a war between US and China. But living in the United States, I know that United States had so many problems and is totally overextended to all parts of the world. Even though the United States is a big military power, it is hard, I think, at this point for the United States to start a war.
Thank you, Pao-yu. We have, more questions, technical questions. So they're asking whether there will be a transcript to this very interesting Q&A. Actually, you can actually access a recording of this on Facebook Live. We posted it here. We'll post it again. So you can watch this again and again, including the Q&A. What else? So may I just request everyone, because Sunny is also asking whether it's possible for us to have to have the questions which were not discussed here for other people to read Pao-yu's or Josh or Kistler's responses. So I would like to request everyone who's here, if they're interested, they can just type in their emails. We will not end this forum abruptly. So if you could just type in your email so we can send you the conversations after this, the responses of our speakers, especially Pao-yu's, and we will also be this particular chat and sending it to everyone. So if you could just type your emails, and you will have access to the questions which are in here and the responses from our speakers. So
I just want to say I'm really happy to see the great interest in all the topics we are trying to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pao-yu, and we will continue this conversation definitely. But before I okay, so at this point, may I just call on Kistler to give us, briefly information on how to access the books, how to order from FLP. Please go ahead.
Okay. So if you're looking for the books, you have there's three ways of getting them. Yeah, either you want hard copies, and then we have a web shop that we'll type in the chat right now. And so each of the book is like $6, and then there's the shipping to that. That's like $5, I think, plus the price of plus like $1 per book, I think. Or if you don't want to pay, that's fine too. You can just download them for free on our website. They're PDF. I see someone say the free PDF isn't working on the website. As far as I know, I'll fix that in a minute. And yeah, so you can get the PDF on the website for both Rethinking Socialism from Victory to Defeat. Or the third option is, like I said earlier, we have now audiobook of both of those books. So if you don't want to read, you can listen. Yeah, that's, I think, the only three way we have it available. And also, if you want to read it in Turkish or in French for some reason, or in Chinese, it's possible too. So yeah, just contact us for this stuff.
Okay, thank you, Kistler. I would, on behalf of the sponsors, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to Professor and Comrade Pao-yu Ching, to Professor Joshua Mufawad Paul, to our comrade from FLP, Christophe Kistler. I would like to personally thank Professor Gina Umali and our staff here at the Center for International Studies. Thank you so much. They're here helping us out, survive technical difficulties. Thank you to all participants. And at this point, I would like to call on our comrade from Bagong Alyansang Makabayan or Bayan, the new People's New Patriotic Alliance, our International Liaison Officer, Comrade Rita Bawa, for the closing remarks. Rita, you're on. Hi, Rita. Are you still with us? Is Rita still with us? Okay, so as we wait for Rita, may I just ask the participants, to those who have not typed in their emails. Oh, there you go. Go ahead. Rita, you have to unmute yourself. Please unmute because we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, good. We can't hear you, Rita. We have already unmuted you. There, okay.
All right, can you hear me now?
We can hear you well. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everybody from the Philippines. Good morning from Bayan. It's not a rainy day, it's sunny. So thank you to all the participants, especially Pao-yu Ching. She's very well now. And we're very glad that we were able to listen to her and her views about socialism in China. And I was looking at the chat box, and I am amazed because there are about 56 comments, which prove that the topic is very interesting, and the two books that were launched today are really inviting pledges to buy these two books online. No? So we thank everybody for participating in this webinar, and that socialism remains our dream perspective. And I'd like to emphasize only that a few points. Bayan expresses solidarity with the people of China. As Pao-yu Ching says, the mass movement there is not sleeping. It is waging the struggle underground. And we wish our Chinese comrades to continue their struggle for genuine socialism in their country. And that there are other countries who are also fighting for socialism now. At the same time, we would like also to highlight what Pao Yuqing says, that in China, there is reason for them to continue or to fight for socialism because they've seen the comparison of two systems, a privilege that other countries have not undergone, but China has, and therefore that is their perspective. So we express again our solidarity with the people of China. Now, to emphasize, socialism is a dream for every one of us, especially in the Philippines, where poverty is very great, especially now that we have undergone another devastation from a super typhoon, especially in the Bicol region. We're suffering severe repression from a government that does not brook any opposition or criticism. So socialism remains a dream. But at the same time, I'd like to inform everybody that in the grassroots areas, in the urban areas, there are efforts to build socialism, even if it's very small, because that can be done, no? Even though it can be it's hidden from the government. But at the same time, there are efforts also to make it public, because socialism is very good. It's an ideal situation, and it can be achievable. But at the same time, I'd like to emphasize too that socialism as a dream, we should forever remember that within socialism itself, within any structure, there will always be struggles. As Joma has pointed out, there was a struggle, a great struggle between the socialist view and the bourgeois view in China. And there were times that the socialist view prevailed, but right now, it's the bourgeois capitalist view that has prevailed in China. So the struggle there must remain. And that's why we give emphasis to the great cultural revolution that happened in China. It must always be around in any mass movement. The efforts of everybody to criticize one another, to point out weaknesses and strengths, so that the mass movement improves. No? So we look forward to other issues that we can discuss on the webinar. And at this point, we would like again to say thank you to everybody who participated in this very good webinar. And from us, we say mabuhay po kayo.
Thank you so much, Rita. So that ends our Philippine book launch of Rethinking Socialism and From Victory to Defeat. Thank you so much all. We have posted our email address, so you can contact us if you have any more questions or requests. I'd just like to make sure that everyone has actually posted their email so we can contact you, because we want to publish the chat here. It's historic. And yeah, before we end, I would just like to say that I think all generations would have a representative, right? From so-called market research, intergenerational approach. we don't really believe that. We know that there's class struggle, but from this, from the boomers or silent generation to Generation X to Y and Z, they're all here. We would like to thank the students of the Center for International Studies for also joining us. And we will not leave the chat room. The chat room will be open just in case people have not yet posted their emails, because we would like to, So we'll be on for 5 minutes just to make sure that we all could contact you and you could contact us for any of your requests. And we will also be posting once more the Facebook live streaming of this one on the chat, so you can easily share it or access it anytime you want. Thank you so much. Mabuhay and padayon, meaning let's continue with the struggle. Thank you, Center for International Studies, Bayan, and Foreign Languages Press.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So there you go. That's the Facebook live streaming. You may share it on your Twitter account or your Facebook account. We actually had a total of 65 people joining us on Zoom, and many more on Facebook, right? So thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Long live international solidarity.
Bye.
We're still here. Please post.
I'm leaving. Bye. Bye. Good night.
Bye. Thank you, Josh.
Long live.
Long live international solidarity.
Long live. We will still be on for another 2 minutes, just so that you can post your email addresses and we can send you the transcripts of the chat. And we can connect you to the speakers also.